Well, hello and welcome to Tuesday Tea with Meg. I am joined this week by my esteemed guest, Dr. John Slippy.
Hello.
He was my chiropractor when we lived in Pennsylvania, and he's very good at what he does. He's not rough. He won't twist you around and make everything crack and have you feel like you're having a terrible out-of-body experience. But he just is very good at his job, and he knows supplements, and I just really appreciated his care when I lived here, and I wanted to introduce the world to him and hear his take on health and wholeness. So thank you for joining us, Dr.
Thank you.
Slippy.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure to be here.
Can you tell us what kind of tea you have today?
I'm drinking Earl Grey tea.
Oh,
Yeah, my wife and I, coming up on 26 years of marriage, we honeymooned in Ireland, and we got kind of turned on to the British and Irish and the British teas. So
yeah.
Earl Grey is one. It just makes me think of the British teas. So
It's a great tea, and I have it fairly often. I don't remember if I've covered it yet in one of my Tuesday teas but yeah, it's a great tea, and I approve of that one.
well, good. I'm glad you approve.
I've got a passion tea, and it's iced. I wasn't really expecting it to be cold. It's kind of chilly out, but we're going to go with it because it's passion tea, and it's good.
Yeah.
So I have some questions for you about chiropractic work. First of all, how did you get into this line of work?
So my wife was in a car accident shortly after we were married, and we were advised to seek the help of a chiropractor, and we went to a chiropractor who it actually wasn't a good experience at first.
Oh,
This chiropractor had us in his office about four days a week for a couple months, and my wife didn't get any better. And at the time, I thought, all these chiropractors are shysters.
oh yeah, I didn't know that part.
He was really billing the insurance, and she wasn't getting any better. And so I had a terrible opinion of chiropractors. But then a friend of ours said, "You really should see my chiropractor. I think it could help your wife." So we went, and in 2 visits, her migraines were gone.
Wow.
So I saw the worst and the best.
Huh.
And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And as we got to know that chiropractor and hearing stories, and at the time I had been through Bible college thinking I was going to be a pastor, and I wanted to work with people and help them spiritually and mentally, emotionally. But then as I got exposed to chiropractic, thinking, wow, you can help people in so many ways with this. But it would have meant going back to school for pre-med coursework and then moving out. There were no chiropractic schools locally, so we had to move. And we just prayed about it, and we were counseled, you know what, if it's meant to be, the doors will open. Keep going. If the doors close, don't force them through. And it's been an absolute joy from the beginning. Yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, for the record, I think Dr. Slippy would be a great pastor or theologian. So I'm sure you give your patients lots of sage wisdom medicinally, if you can call supplements that, and theologically, probably.
Well, I like to talk about what matters, and people matter most to God. And so, yeah, I like to talk about things that matter. Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
So you kind of answered this with your last question, but why would someone need a chiropractor?
Well, there are several ways to approach that question. There are acute issues, not cute, but acute issues. Like if somebody falls off a ladder or is in a car accident, they may not need surgery, but they're all out of sorts, and they can have lifelong injuries that just like lifelong. They follow them through their lives if they're not addressed. So those, of course, would need to be seen and can be sorted out. And then there are other elements where, over time, we've come to realize there are immense benefits neurologically and even just systemically as the body systems communicate with one another through the nervous system. And chiropractic is kind of like a good, I think in terms of a lot of analogies, but if you think of a house with an electric panel in the basement and all the electricity goes into that panel, and you can turn off the whole living room and the dining room with a flip of a switch, or half the house, you can turn off the whole house with the master switch. But that panel and those switches is very much like the spinal column that it misalignment affects all the nerves that exit at each level and go to different parts of the body and affect different systems. So you may not be like all bent out of shape, but if you're out of alignment because you like to play basketball on the weekends or go rock climbing, or if you're a farmer, or if you're sitting in a truck, driving truck hours at a time, any profession has its impact on the person physically. And so they get out of sorts. And we've had plenty of stories where people didn't realize how much their spine and alignment was a major factor in their health concerns. And it just so happens they were getting adjusted and they see some of those health concerns resolve that you would think aren't necessarily a chiropractic thing, but
Yeah.
only to find out that was at the core of some of the dysfunction.
Yeah, and I know whenever, when we have colds, a lot of times we can go to a chiropractor and you'll do things to help the sinuses drain or just make the symptoms, it seems like they disappear faster.
Yeah, everything working optimally is kind of the goal. And there are some indirect ways that getting adjusted helps. When somebody's neck is out of alignment, it can affect the muscles in the neck, which can make things tight for the lymphatic system that is throughout your body. It's a whole network, kind of like some people think of it as like the sewage system of your immune system. But if it's not draining well, your sinuses won't necessarily drain well either. And so some people who are just having lingering sinus infections, they get antibiotics and it goes away, but then it comes back. It's because the petri dish material for growing bacteria in the sinuses has not drained, and then getting adjusted can help it to drain, and that actually resolves the issue so it doesn't just keep happening again.
Okay.
Yeah, and we see that with babies a lot too. It's a lot of fun. If they're having recurrent ear infections and their eustachian tubes aren't draining and there's a lot of pressure, there's no placebo with babies. It either works or it doesn't. And so to even have pediatricians saying, wow, this kid had 3 sets of tubes, and once the tubes fall out, they go back to their ear infections, and then they see the chiropractor and the ear infections stop. It's pretty cool. Fun to be a part of that.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a way that people can get their lymphatic systems moving by themselves?
Yeah, the lymphatic system, if you look at some anatomy books that illustrate it, it looks kind of like, almost like the vascular system, in that you see it spread throughout the whole body, arms and legs and trunk and neck and face, but there's no pump to it. So the circulatory system, the cardiovascular system has a pump, which is the heart, but the lymphatic system is moved by movement. So exercise will move it. Massage can move it. But other than that, that's the primary means. It's just movement. So if somebody is sedentary, or if they've been injured and they've had a medical procedure and they can't get up and move, you'll often hear hospital staff wanting to get them up and moving because they want to move that lymph and get it going. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Oh, another thing, rebounders. If you ever heard of a rebounder, it's like a small trampoline.
Yes.
It's really big for lymphatic drainage because even just bouncing around on one of those is good for getting things moving.
Yeah.
That's one way you can do it at home.
Yeah, sometimes I just let the kids jump on it if they have a cold or if they don't have a cold or if they just need to burn off some energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so can you tell me any good short stories about how you've helped someone with chiropractic care?
Well, yeah, I have a lot of stories. I used to track them all, and I'd come home every day from work and tell my wife and kids about some things that happened. And now it's just become the normal day-to-day expectation that small miracles will happen. But like I also do functional medicine, and I've had some couples that come in after having done fertility treatments and having no success, and then they come to see me for the functional medicine element to see if there's some insufficiencies that need to be addressed. And then they also will often start seeing me for chiropractic care. And there's been a couple cases where it was the misalignment that was interfering with the systems miscommunicating. And before we even got started on any protocols or even testing, shortly after the adjustments started, they conceived. And that's just a lot of fun. And then we didn't even have to move forward with all the functional medicine stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah, people with chronic migraines. I had another functional medicine patient who came in for her chronic sinusitis, and before we even got into it, I said, well, have you been adjusted for these things? And she had been seeing a chiropractor, but that's one thing, not all chiropractors are the same, kind of like,
Yeah.
not all meatloaf is the same, not all lasagna is the same. Some is better than others, and there's an art to some of it, and I would say all chiropractors are good at some elements, and certain ones are better at one area than another, and so amongst all of us we can kind of round things out. But for this patient, the chiropractor she was seeing hadn't really done much with her neck, and I said, before we get into the functional medicine, we should schedule you for an adjustment. And after the first adjustment, her sinuses drained out completely. And she hasn't had an issue since. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Some people with auditory issues have seen much improvement with adjustments. Bedwetting for children is often improved with adjustments, and that's fun to see, especially if it's like a 10-year-old kid who is really embarrassed about going to camp and how this is going to play out, and then they come in and they get up and go to the bathroom in the night and don't even remember it after. But that feedback of your body sensing that you have to go is suddenly restored. So I could probably sit here and just think of a bunch of different things, but it's just a lot of fun to help people that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's just a rewarding sort of job, and one that it sounds like you can see fairly immediate results with often.
Yeah. I mean, I'm overlooking all the routine, like people come in severe pain and walk out feeling pain-free. To be able to do that for somebody is just, it's always a thrill.
Yeah.
And that look of astonishment when they wonder, like, what in the world did you do? Like it doesn't always work out that way, but the majority of the time, people come in if they're hurting and they leave feeling mostly, if not completely, better. It's a lot of fun.
That's wonderful.
Yep.
Okay. And so Dr. Slippy has a biofeedback machine, which is different from the kind I have. It's just a different type. It functions differently. But I would love for you to tell our viewers about that.
Yeah, so we use a machine called Zyto, Z-Y-T-O, and we call it a biodermal scan, but it is a form of biofeedback in that you put your hand on this device, and it sends digital signals into your hand and then waits to receive the correct response from the body. And the way that it's hard to explain it to people, but the way we try to explain it is when you talk on the phone to somebody who's across the country, you're not speaking into a pipe and they're hearing your voice. You're having your voice translated into a digital signal, beamed usually up to a satellite and then down, and then reconstituted to sound like your voice. And so this type of biofeedback sends a digital signal into your hand and then expects the return to be a certain signal. And if it's not, it begins testing different nutrients or different solutions to what would correct the signal so that it's received the right way. And then it spits out a report. And then we interpret the report and make sure that we're sorting through what is worth addressing and what might be incidental, like where they sat in the waiting room, if it was close to the heater, or if it was, if they're dehydrated, and you know, they don't need a supplement for that. They can just drink more water. But we've had new moms do the scan, and it'll show up all this activity with the mammary glands. And mom will say, well, it is time to feed the baby. So it's and we've had some interesting cases of people having complex medical issues sorted out indirectly, but by way of this biofeedback, kind of giving some direction to where we could go and investigate further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And since you're a doctor, you can probably use it in a way that I can't. I mean, I can't diagnose anything with mine, but I can find areas of imbalance or
Yeah.
low energy, or
Yeah.
and I can point people towards doctors or chiropractors or whoever they feel like they need to go to help them in that area.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Are there any stories you want to share about how your biofeedback machine has helped someone?
Well, my favorite story is one where we see a lot of Amish and plainclothes people in this area where we live and where I practice. I had an Amish patient come in to do the scan. Her parents brought her in. I believe she was 13 at the time. And she'd been having abdominal pain. And typically the Amish won't run to medical care. They want to try conservative things first. So by the time it gets to a medical evaluation, it usually has gotten pretty bad. But this had gotten to the point where she was in a lot of pain and was missing school. And they did get a medical workup and blood work and some imaging studies. And they didn't really find anything to explain it. So they tried to give her some pain relieving meds. But she was just really getting weak and was in a lot of pain. So they brought her in for a scan. And the whole scan pointed to her spleen. And the spleen is the organ that is often forgotten. It checks red blood cells to make sure that they're still good for use, and if they are, it recirculates them, and if they're not, it breaks them down. And it's actually a miracle, because when red blood cells come together in large numbers, you get a clot usually, but they don't clot in the spleen. But anyway, her spleen, the program was showing that her spleen was significantly dysfunctional. So I ordered an ultrasound imaging study on her spleen. She went to a hospital imaging center to get that done, and they admitted her immediately because it was infected. And they further, when they went in to address it, they found that it was spreading through several compartments of her abdomen and had gotten to her small intestines. And so she was hospitalized for weeks and had some of her intestines removed. But ultimately was fine, and that could have been deadly if it went far enough in its advance. So the family came back and told me afterward, and they said, your machine really helped to save her life. And that is by far the most profound story that we have with that, but also validating its accuracy. It doesn't say exactly what's wrong. It just points you in the right direction, and gives some better clarity that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's so many tools we can use in our society, from like primitive tools to more complex things like that. And I don't think we necessarily need biofeedback to serve God and serve people and accomplish the health goals we want to achieve. But that's a great example of a time when it was really useful and really helpful. And I'm thankful we have that kind of technology and that you can use it in your practice. Okay, that's awesome. All right. Well, I guess my last question is, how do you pursue health and wholeness in your own life?
Oh, that's a good question. I love that question. Well, everybody's different. In my own life, I do feel obligated to practice what I preach. And so it is a means of accountability to talk to patients and to relate to them through health and holistic means. So it's important for me to, I would say, if I could boil it down to the priorities, I want to take good care of my body, not to make it the epicenter and the focus of my life, but when I'm talking to patients about how to care for their bodies, I will often say, you know, if you're a farmer and you have equipment and you use it all the time, but you don't take care of it, you're not going to be able to farm. Or if you're a truck driver and you own your own truck and you don't maintain it, you can drive it for a while, but then it's just going to stop working eventually for you. So you have to take care of it. So being a good steward and taking care of the body is important. For a lot of us, the question is, well, how do we do that? Where do you start? And that's, I think, where a lot of people find themselves. Everybody can relate to wanting to take care of themselves, but where do you start? It has to be well, you want to start somewhere where you can succeed. And any step that you take in the right direction is one step more than you had previously taken, so that's good. For me, eating well, eating food that is as healthy as I can find it is important. Working out, and for my job, I have to maintain the ability to do the physical elements of adjusting, or I'll hurt myself. So I work out 4 to 5 times a week and make that a priority. From a nutrition standpoint, I try to have some grace. I never want my standards of nutrition to interfere with having a good meal with friends.
Yeah.
And people are the most important thing. But then also spiritually, my relationship with the Lord is, as I get to be in, I get to take unofficial surveys of humanity by so many people that come through the office of all different walks of life and all different beliefs, and that has only confirmed and affirmed what I know to be true about God as revealed in the Bible. And so Jesus Christ is everything to me, and my relationship with him, even at times when I've been a skeptic, he has always been found to be faithful and true. And so having a good balance of spiritual health, whether or not people think they believe in anything, everybody has a belief system.
Yeah.
And it is what kind of directs and governs the choices that they make. So a good, as far as how to maintain health and wholeness spiritually, which feeds into the mental and emotional aspect.
It does. It's all connected.
Yes. If people are trying to have healthy mental and emotional, if they're trying to have mental and emotional health apart from a solid foundation spiritually, it's kind of like chasing your tail. It really is. You can feel like you have gained some ground, but then you quickly realize that you're losing ground if you don't have an anchor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could just speed on about that, but also just about the way to approach health and wholeness. Everybody's different, and everybody starts at a different point. I grew up eating Twinkies for breakfast at times and putting Nestle Quick over the cornflakes that my mom would give me. And so
Don't do that.
Yeah, no, don't do that. But if you said if you asked me if I eat healthy, I would say, well, it goes in one end and comes out the other, so it must be fine. And the nice people at the grocery store sell it, so it must be fine.
Yeah.
But it's just not the case.
Yeah.
So as we all learn, there's grace for the process. But my wife and I have tried to instill in our 4 daughters. I don't know who came up with this quote, but a chiropractor mentor of mine mentioned it, and he mentions it a lot. But I don't know who to quote for this, but it is, the quality of your life is directly impacted by the quality of questions that you ask.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and so asking good questions can lead to good answers that can further advance where you are. and in each of those categories of physical and mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me for tea.
My pleasure.
I'm hoping to air this next week, and then after that, air my interview with Michelle, who has a son with epilepsy, who she's treated with a lot of natural methods that have really helped him, in addition to going to traditional doctors. But she's seen advances that they were not expecting because of what she used. But
That's great.
yeah. Yeah, so thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
And thank you for
Thanks for
joining
having me.
us.
Yeah.
Happy Tea Day.
Happy Tea Day.